Dawnbringer Book 1, Chapter 16, Like the Wind. After gathering their supplies, Eldarien and Rorlane set off on horseback, their faces to the early morning sun. The land before them is flat, an almost uninterrupted plain stretching to the east, dotted with farmland and pastures for livestock, interspersed with groves of trees and ponds or small lakes that glisten in the sunlight. But according to the word that they received, they know that the land shall soon fall away beneath them, revealing a canyon hidden in the flat earth, rising again to flatness on the other end. Neither man has been there before, so they know not its appearance or its size, though for the sake of the speed required in their journey, as well as the fatigue that they still feel, they hope it is not too great. Eldarien in particular feels this fatigue, and more than fatigue, this illness that has been clinging to him since his dream days before. He is unable to hide his pain and weakness, and Rorlane notes it, though they do not speak of it. 5 or 6 miles further on, the earth suddenly falls away before them, revealing a wide rift in the earth, with rocky walls littered with loose stone and crooked trees, and in places outcroppings of richer grass and vegetation. They pause along the edge of the ridge and look out over the canyon. It appears to be a mile or so deep and at least 2 or 3 leagues across, a significant delay in their journey, though uneased by the fact that the road they have been following snakes its way down the face of the cliff and climbs back up on the other side. The path across will not be hard to find, though it will slow their passage, for a winding road with numerous switchbacks is much slower than a straight road going unhindered to one's destination. A soft breeze whistles through the canyon and cools the otherwise warm and stuffy air that envelops them as they begin to descend. Birds call in the surrounding trees, and the scent of spring foliage is strong, as if carried up from the canyon by the breeze, intermingling with the sound of birds and the sunlit scenery in a symphony of smell and sound and sight. Eldarien is heartened by the warmth and the beauty, and a measure of his weakness departs from him. Riding now on horseback also allows him to gradually recover his strength without the need of exerting himself by walking on his own legs. Some of the horse's steps still feel jarring to him and send a throbbing pain through his neck and head, but almost as if sensing his pain, the horse treads as carefully and softly as it can. But Eldarien knows that once they come to the other side of the canyon and find flat ground again before them, it would be wise to spur the horses on to a gallop. It is not that they expect the joined forces of Empire and Druidak to attack soon, that may be many months ahead yet, but that the sooner the message is delivered, the more time there will be for the people to prepare, and the more likely any disaster shall be averted. As they come to the floor of the canyon, the air grows dense and warm, and the breeze stills, stirring the branches of trees above them, but leaving the base almost untouched. In such a cold land as Telmerion, this may be one of the warmest places of all, here where the brilliant light of the sun is refracted off the rocky face of the cliffs, almost like flames in a hearth. But even now, in the late, albeit delayed springtime, the air is no more than pleasant and certainly not hot. Eldarien raises his face to the light and welcomes the warmth upon his face, feeling rejuvenated by nature's caress. He looks around and drinks in the stillness and quietude that surround him, the trees and plants as if slumbering for a midday nap under the rays of the sun, and the great stones of the earth unmoving, as if welcoming the weary traveller for a rest. He feels a desire to stop in the canyon for a moment, and almost turns to Rorlane and asks if he wishes to sit and take their meal here, in this quiet place, before continuing on. But he knows that they must continue without delay. At first, he feels disappointed that they must continue on without even pausing to cherish their surroundings and to rest themselves. But as the horse continues to walk underneath him, its hooves crunching softly along the path, and its body breathing and swaying underneath him, and as he looks around, opening all of his senses to the beauty of the canyon, he feels a surge of gratitude just to be in this place, to be passing through it. He need not linger here, as if trying to cup in his hands beauty that would only slip through and be gone. In the desire to grasp and possess it, such beauty would only slip away. Rather, when he welcomes it in passing, just as every person who has ever lived within time has had to do with each fading moment, it somehow continues to live inside of him, to take up its abode in his heart, insofar as such a heart remains pure and free. At this moment, Eldarien's thoughts are interrupted by Rorlane, who, riding a few yards in front of him, turns back and looks at him.
"Would you like to stop here for just a moment?"
he asks.
"It is midday now, and I thought it would be good to have a bite to eat. However, all of the food is in your horse's pack."
"It is indeed, isn't it?"
Eldarien remarks.
"Let us hope that we do not become separated then."
"I will not let that happen."
They stop and tie their horses to a nearby tree beside the path, where they can drink from a small pond, no more than 5 by 10 feet wide, hidden among the trees. Unpacking a bit of food, they begin their midday repast, Eldarien leaning back against the trunk of an old oak, and Rorlane pacing back and forth in the dappled light and shadow of the trees.
"How are you feeling?"
Rorlane asks after a couple minutes.
"The sunlight and the riding are both doing me good,"
answers Eldarien.
"I hope that I am finally shaking off this illness."
"That is good to hear. I too feel fatigued from the events of the previous weeks and our trek on foot across these wild lands. But I know that your illness is something else entirely."
"Maybe it is no more than fatigue,"
Eldarien says,
"or my body's way of processing the events that we have witnessed with our eyes and of which we have been a part."
"Perhaps."
They depart again after less than 15 minutes, both glad for the pause in the journey, but eager to continue. The path to the top of the ravine on the opposite side of the canyon is much slower than the path down had been, though the horses greatly ease the difficulty, shouldering as they do all the burden of the ascent. Eldarien pats his horse along the head and mane in a sign of grateful acknowledgement and says,
"I wish that Sohien would have told me your name if he gave you one, or that I would have asked. I suppose I could call you a name myself. What do you think it should be? How about Aeglir? It would mean steed of the wind in the ancient tongue, I believe. That is what I hope you are, and that you shall ride like the wind when we have need of your speed."
At the top of the ridge, the road runs straight before them, and they stir their horses onto a canter with the afternoon sun behind them and scattered farms and homesteads to their right and left. They ride on until twilight at a good pace, pushing their horses within reason until they come to a hamlet. Here they see another inn and enter it to share the news that they carry. After a thorough explanation and a favorable response, they depart again without delay. They continue east for another 3 hours before finding a copse at the side of the road in which to rest for the night. In the morning, a light drizzle wakes them, and they eat a quick breakfast and mount their horses to continue their journey. Eldarien again feels his health improving, perhaps by the physical rest granted from riding rather than walking, or because they again have adequate provisions. As such, Even the dampness that pervades his clothing and soaks his hair is unable to dampen his spirits. He begins to feel a spark of hope concerning their journey, and though the future itself looks bleak, as a war with incredible forces of darkness seems all but unavoidable, he takes comfort in the moment and its purpose. They ride for peace and protection. They ride to bring warning and to save human life. And for now, this is enough. By the afternoon, the sky has cleared, and the sun shines unobstructed, except by a few wisps of white cloud moving lazily in the breeze. As they ride, the land before them begins to slope downward, and they find that they can see for a great distance. A wide expanse of plain lies open before their gaze, bathed in the daytime light, and in the distance, near the very limit of sight, they see what appears to be a village at the edge of a forest. It will take them at least another 2 or 3 days to reach it, but it appears that the road they follow shall lead them straight there.
I think that is the Mardus road.
Eldarien says,
And the village of Mordafiana. We should be able to replenish our supplies there, I hope.
And to bring them word,
adds Rorlain.
Yes.
On the eve of the 3rd day, they come to the village, about 60 houses built of rough-hewn stone, most with thatched roofs, well built but plain. The barking of a dog greets their arrival, warning them as it watches them pass, but it falls silent again when they have moved on beyond its owner's house. Almost every house has an enclosed garden in the front or the back, though it appears that the crops are few. They also pass a couple pens of bleating sheep and some chickens, but otherwise the village is quiet and still, the workday over and day, leaning on toward night. It appears that trade in this town is small, and everything that they witness speaks of self-sufficiency off the land and the mutual interdependence of the villagers between themselves, rather than their reliance on commerce with other settlements.
I suppose an inn shall again be best.
Rorlain asks.
Indeed. If I remember correctly, there should be one at the intersection of the 2 roads.
Replies Eldarien.
So this is Mordafiana?
Yes. I have passed through here before, but have never either entered or left from the west.
They come shortly to the inn, which is named Bard's Beard, and enter through the front door into a much more crowded tavern than they had encountered in the nearly empty spring-summer inn. They are immediately surrounded by the murmuring sound of numerous conversations, by the clanking of plates, utensils and cups, and by the chords of a lute being played softly in a corner, accompanied by a low male voice intoning lyrics which they cannot make out. There are 20 or 30 people in the room, seated either at a long counter or at round tables, cramped tightly together nearly from wall to wall, leaving very little room to walk. Eldarien smiles as he sees a young serving boy, perhaps in his early teenage years, holding a platter of food over his head as he tries to squeeze through a narrow opening between 2 tables, though the look on his face indicates only that this is totally ordinary. It seems that all persons in the inn are well accustomed to the cramped space and find it cozy rather than inconvenient.
Welcome to the Bard's Beard.
A voice calls to them, followed shortly by the appearance of a short man in his middling years.
You look like travellers. My name is Forrard, and I am at your service. Are you seeking accommodations for the night and perhaps a hot plate of food?
We are travellers, yes,
replies Eldarien.
though I am afraid that we cannot afford your services. We have come rather to bring a message to the people of this village.
You speak in a grave tone,
says Forrard.
Are you sure you don't need anything?
As I said, unfortunately we have no money, but I would like to speak with the proprietor for a few moments.
Well, I am he, but I don't have time to be standing around talking in the evening like this, and that's not to mention that you seem rather suspicious coming in here without money, and yet wishing for a serious conversation. What may your business be?
We bring news of the civil war, which may be important for the people of this village as of all the lands east of the mountains.
Rorlain says.
We wish not to startle you, nor anyone else, but perhaps we could speak with the mayor of the town.
Vorad eyes them for a long moment with concern in his eyes.
You recruiting or something?
He asks at last.
No,
Says Rorlain.
we only bring a word of caution and warning about the spread of violence.
War is spreading, always spreading.
Vorad says, as if chanting to himself.
But it's been years already and it has never come close to us. What would either the Empire or the rebels have to do with a small village such as ours?
The Empire plans to march east in battle array, and though they make way for Ristfand, it is likely that they will pass this way.
Says Eldarien, loosening the restraint that he and Rorlain had been trying to maintain until that moment.
And if they do come this way, I fear for the lives and well-being of the inhabitants of this village. At the very least, I doubt that your crops and livelihood will be left untouched.
Vorad mulls this over for a while and looks about him. They cannot tell whether he's simply impatient to return to his customers or if he is worried about the conversation being overheard.
Let me tell you something.
Vorad says.
Don't you come bringing worry to our peaceful people, but... Well, tomorrow I will introduce you to our mayor. Tonight, however, if you truly cannot pay, I ask you to find accommodations of your own.
That is only fitting,
says Eldarien.
We did not ask for them, and are content to sleep outside beyond the confines of the village.
Very well then.
Vorad says.
Come by again in the morning, but not too late, before the day's work gets its wheels turning too quickly, and I'll take you by the mayor's house.
Thank you.
Eldarien and Rorlain both say with bows, and then they turn and depart from the tavern, with more than one pair of eyes fixed upon them as they leave.
It is amazing.
Rorlain comments when they are back on the road, their horses' reins in their hands.
That every man may respond so differently to the same news.
Indeed,
replies Eldarien.
But he is only an innkeeper. The care of the village is not his. I trust we shall receive a very different response from the mayor when we meet him tomorrow.
I would go back in the tavern and have a seat simply to listen to the bard and see if he has a beard.
Comments Rorlain.
But I think we have already stirred enough suspicion as it is.
They both laugh softly at this, and then Eldarien says,
But I think you are right. It is best to let it rest for the moment. Perhaps you could sing something for us instead.
You have a beard as well as I,
says Rorlain with another chuckle.
And perhaps your voice is better than my own. I sing like a croaking frog.
I highly doubt that, but I would be happy to sing a little something after we have made camp, though it will not be a tavern song, and neither have I lyre or lute.
We will just have to make do then,
says Rorlain, placing his hand on Eldarien's shoulder.
But seriously, I would love to hear whatever song you wish to sing.
Then I will sing.
The two men find a cluster of trees a 5-minute ride from the village, and here tie up their horses and make camp. Uncertain of whether the land is owned, they refrain from gathering wood and making a fire. But the air is comfortable enough, and they have enough dry provisions for supper that it is not necessary.
So let's have the song,
Rorlain says, after they have eaten.
Very well.
Eldarien rises to his feet and looks out across the empty plains and fields, now darkening unto full night.
As I said, it is not a tavern song, nor even a song for feast and dance. It is more like a lullaby or a hymn. I learned it from my mother.
Take your time.
Eldarien continues to look out into the darkness and clears his throat. Then he begins in a low voice, tracing out a tune that is more a chant than a melody, sound placed purely at the service of the words and their meaning.
The mountain passes swept with snow sing silently of sun's swift rise, and of moon song in the night's serenity, lullaby of history's longevity, come to a point here. Snowfall heavy and soft, soft accumulation heavy resting over earth, buried silent still under the blanket that blinds the eyes, so radiant yet in the night, so dark, so still. Snow melt, trickling over muddy earth in spring's sweetness, melting multitudes of murky pathways tracing their ways through the earth, to lake and stream, streams that take their way downward as temperature rises, and the bird's song accompanies all, harbinger of coming dawn. Sun and moon, snow and water, earth and sky, and the singing of the dove, bird of longing, and the tittering of little birds, endless jubilation, for with the coming of the spring comes dayspring. Dawnbringer slumbering under earth, heavy and light, arises as the everlasting day and life he brings.
The next morning, the mayor, a man by the name of Hassin, does indeed listen to their message and receive it in all seriousness. After they have recounted to him the events that they witnessed, he replies,
"This is a grave matter indeed, and I thank you for making a point, even though you ride for Ristfand, of bringing word also to me. Mordafiana is the largest village hereabout, and so I will take it upon myself to relay this message to all the settlements in the plains. I will even send a rider east to the towns along Lake Elena."
Thank you.
Eldarien says,
And I trust that some in these villages will bring word even further.
"Oh yes, it is likely that within a matter of a month or two there will be no village east of the mountains from Rovus to Galayad that will be without knowledge of the threats that lie before us. In fact, I suspect that this news shall stir the hearts of many who have been idle in passing judgment on the civil war, or who have sided with the Empire to join those who fight with the rebel forces. Whether they intended it or not, the Imperials have sent a clear message to all of us. The Empire is a danger to the people of Telmerion, and we can no longer remain indifferent."
I fear that you are right,
says Rorlain.
though I think this is more than just a conflict of rebels and Imperials, for the rebels alone shall not be the only force fighting for the safety and security and freedom of our people.
"What do you mean?"
asks Hassin.
"Surely we need to join our efforts in order to stand a fighting chance against the dangers before us."
Yes, you are right. But the rebels fight not only to protect the people from threats, but to bring about a new order. Their political goals, at least at present, are, I fear, inseparable from their intent to fight for the people, and not all shall agree with the former, even if they need the latter.
"What other choice would we have?"
At this point I know not,
Concludes Rorlain.
but your words and even your questions betray wisdom and a thoughtful mind, Hassin. May you find light soon regarding the right path to take for the welfare of the people whom you represent.
Hassin nods at this and says,
"May that indeed be true."
Then Eldarien speaks.
There is one further thing that you and your people can do at present.
"What is that?"
It is a delicate issue, for it requires a balance of the desire for self-defense and the need to aid in the greater cause.
"You need men to take up arms and aid in the fight."
Yes, and in Ristfand specifically. I fear that we shall be facing a difficult battle. The numbers of our foe we do not yet know, but the intent of destruction seems clear, and the force shall be appropriate to the intent.
"But we need men here to protect our towns and villages as well."
Hassin says,
That is indeed the issue.
Indeed, but I do not think you will stand a fighting chance at all on your home turf, even were you to retain all your men and give them whatever weapons you may.
Rorlain says,
A force that marches to attack the city shall easily pass through a small village like fire through a wood.
"Then our only chance is to flee before they arrive."
Hassin says,
I believe so.
agrees Eldarien.
You must be on alert for any signs of their approach and make known to your people a plan by which you may escape them. A plan of both speed and stealth. Perhaps the woods to the east may provide some protection, particularly if you prepare hiding places in advance.
"That is wise. I shall put that into effect as quickly as I may. And I shall also ask roundabout for men willing and desirous of travelling to Ristfand to fight."
At this point, however, let the choice of men be free.
Says Eldarien.
There is no need for a draft as of yet, since we do not know enough either about the enemy's forces, nor their strategy, nor, for that matter, what means of resistance yet lie before us in Ristfand.
"I don't know if I would even be able to draft."
Hassin says,
"Since I do not have an army into which to draft, all depends on the attitude of the leaders in Ristfand, and in fact in the West."
Communication will be difficult and slow,
Rorlain says,
but word has also been sent west, so we shall see what unfolds. You are right, though. A unified force is stronger than a divided one.
After the conversation has concluded, Hassin treats Rorlain and Eldarien to a meal and gives them whatever small provisions he can afford, with the apology that the harvests have been quite poor and there is very little to spare. Then they mount their horses again and set off along the Mardus road to the south. And as they ride over the coming days, the landscape continually changes before them, as flat plains clothed in fields and pastures give way to rolling hills garmented in trees. Though houses dot the countryside, the road is almost deserted, and over a period of 4 days they only encounter 3 other groups of travellers, 2 on horseback and 1 in a carriage. The last they encounter, however, is an imperial patrol. 2 armed soldiers riding side by side to the north, their armour glistening in the sun. Rorlain catches sight of them in the distance and warns Eldarien. They then guide their horses off the road and into the midst of a dense grove of trees, where they wait and watch as the soldiers pass by. When they are back on the road heading south, Rorlain asks,
"What shall we do to get past the checkpoint? Your face, I fear, is too well known that we would be running a risk trying to pass through."
I agree,
says Eldarien.
but I do not think we will have a problem. I doubt that they have set up a perimeter the entire way around the city. If we depart from the road and enter through the wilderness, we should be able to pass easily enough.
I hope you are right.
They draw near to the city on the 6th day since leaving Mordafiana, passing the crest of a rise of land and looking down from a hill upon a wide basin that descends unto the sea. They see Ristfand before them, stone bulwarks bright in the light, and wooden houses numerous, tightly clustered together within the city, while also dotting the landscape round about. The city, though still small in the distance, is nonetheless much larger than any of the settlements that they have yet passed through, home to close to 12,000 inhabitants. As they look down from their vantage point, Eldarien notices that, at the base of the hill on which they now stand, is what appears to be a barrier of some kind, like a fence or perimeter of wood or stone.
That must be the Imperial checkpoint,
he says, pointing.
Then we should leave the road before drawing any nearer,
replies Rorlain.
I agree. We will ride around to the west. I do not know how wide the barrier may go or the patrol, but we can't very well attempt to pass straight through.
They lead their horses through the forested hills until they come to a narrow trough in the land, as if home to an ancient river that has now dried up, splitting the land from the mountains in the west to the road in the east and beyond.
Further up, this small crevice becomes a wide and fertile valley in the mountains,
says Eldarien.
I know not why it is not home to flowing water. Last time I was here it was a fast-flowing river.
Perhaps it was dammed up for some reason,
Rorlain suggests.
I can't think of any other possible cause.
They find it necessary to dismount from their horses and lead them by the bridle along the edge of the trough in search of a fitting place to cross. The sides are steep and rocky, littered with sharp and loose stones, but without any vegetation to provide a handhold or guide. Only after a good 2 or 3 miles do they find a depression in the earth, gradual enough that they can lead the horses down into it and up the other side. As they mount their horses again and make their way to the south, they leave the hills behind and find the land before them mostly flat, though clothed in thick grasses and trees, particularly aspens and conifers.
Do you think we are far enough from the checkpoint to avoid detection as we try to move southward?
Eldarien asks.
I did not see anything that would indicate otherwise, and I would be surprised if they supervised travel this far from the road,
answers Rorlain.
I suppose it all depends,
says Eldarien,
on how firmly they wish to prevent unhindered travel to or from the city. I am not sure even what the purpose of the checkpoint is. Patrols are normal, but never in my memory of either life or history have I known of imperial checkpoints in our land. Soyen said that it was set up months back, so it is not a response to the uprising in the ghetto. It predates that.
Maybe we shall learn more when we make it into the city,
Rorlain proffers.
Indeed, let us hope that we have no trouble getting in nor finding a custodian who is favourable to our cause.
Do you know anything about the mayor of the city and his leanings?
I believe he is called the Heras, named at times in common speech the Jarl,
says Eldarien.
You are correct,
Says Rorlain.
I forget that the clan leadership is located in Ristfand, even though it began centuries ago in Rovers.
But as for your question,
Eldarien continues,
I fear that he shall be sided with the Empire. I believe that all of the Herasi are, or at least they speak not openly against the decisions and commands of the Imperial Legate, nor against the councillors who are appointed to them. I suspect, however, that the picture is quite a bit more nuanced than that, and I would not be surprised to find, whether here in Ristfand or in the leadership of other clans, those who would be happy to openly resist, even unto the Herasi themselves.
So shall we risk speaking to him?
Rorlain asks.
If he is unfavourable, and even worse if he is sided entirely with the plans of the Empire, that could be the end of our message-bringing altogether.
You are right,
Answers Eldarien.
It would be wise of us to act and speak with discretion, and this means concealing our purpose until we have gained a sense of whom we may trust within the government of the city, indeed, within the city as a whole.
Do you have an idea of where to start?
Eldarien thinks about this question in silence for a while as they draw ever nearer to Ristfand. He does not speak again until the walls of the city, a good 20 feet high and made of large hewn stones quarried from the mountains, stand before them. The wooded land now gives way to cultivated fields and fenced pastures, small but numerous, which accompany the outlying houses of the town, mostly buildings of wood, single-story, though some are larger and taller, either of stone or stucco, with arched roofs and ornate gables decorated with horse or hawk or other animal. Eldarien fears for the people of these farms outside the city walls when the attack comes, though indeed it is unlikely that conflict and death shall come only outside the bulwark but shall penetrate even within.
I think,
Eldarien says at last,
that we should speak rather to the leaders of the temple than to those of the city. I trust that they will hear our cause in justice and right, and shall be able to help us proceed in wisdom.
Of which temple in particular do you speak?
Asks Rorlain. Thinking again of the lessons and songs he learned on his mother's knee and of her own tender love, Eldarien replies,
There is one great temple in the city that gives lifeblood more than all the rest. The temple of Neraniel,